Before anything else, hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, leave a comment, and like this video, especially if you've ever questioned your own heart. This story isn't just entertainment, it's a mirror. I never thought I'd say this out loud. I never thought I'd be this woman. But here I am, telling you that I cheated on my husband with a black millionaire who made me feel alive in ways I didn't know I had forgotten. Sounds scandalous? It is. But it's also real. This isn't just a story of infidelity. It's a story about loneliness, desire, choices, and the cost of silence. We live in a world where betrayal wears many faces. Mine wore a smile, a wedding ring, and a secret life that no one saw coming. And while people are quick to judge a cheating wife, few ever ask why she strayed. Fewer still are willing to admit they've walked close to that same line. This is my confession of infidelity, raw, unfiltered, and brutally honest. What you're about to hear might shock you. It might even make you angry, but I promise it will make you feel. Because behind every infidelity story, there's a heartbeat, a human, a pain most don't dare name. So buckle up, because once I start, you won't be able to stop listening. I used to be that woman who confused stability with happiness. My marriage had turned into a predictable routine. Kisses on schedule. I love you as said out of habit, not heart. But everything shifted the moment he walked into my life. A black man, powerful, wealthy, and unapologetically confident. It wasn't just the status, it was the way he looked at me. Like I mattered. Like I was still someone worth desiring. And in that glance, a real infidelity story was already being written. I'm not the first, and I won't be the last, to fall into the trap of being seen again. Infidelity and cheating, they always sound like someone else's issue until you realize you're living that story. He had everything my husband had forgotten to offer. Presence, intensity, the thrill of the unknown. But above all, he made me feel wanted. And it wasn't just physical, it was in his eyes, his voice, the invisible pull that stirred something deep in me. It was like the universe whispered, "You deserve more." And I listened. Suddenly, I was surrounded by luxury, late-night invitations, messages laced with hidden meaning that made my heart race at 2 a.m. That's when the infidelity began. Not with touch, but with thought. Because, let's be honest, cheating doesn't start in a bedroom. It starts in a void. A gaze held too long. A text you read twice. And that tiny spark you don't tell anyone about? It grows. While most people think a cheating story begins under the covers, I know mine started in my mind. The moment he said, "No one sees you the way I do," I was gone. I'd entered a space of forbidden confessions, a dangerous game that felt more thrilling than any reality I had known. And once I crossed that threshold, there was no going back. But little did I know, the worst was yet to come. Before there was any touch, there were words. Words that slowly peeled back the layers of a woman I had forgotten existed. At first, it felt harmless. Messages, compliments, those late-night talks that seemed to fill a silence I didn't know had been suffocating me. It wasn't about sex. Not yet. It was about being heard, being seen. And that's when I realized infidelity doesn't always begin in the body. It begins in the soul. He knew things about me that even my husband never cared to ask. Like how I missed dancing in the kitchen, or how I used to write poems I never showed anyone. Every time we talked, I felt lighter, freer, like someone had lifted the weight I'd been dragging for years. That emotional connection? It was addictive. I had entered the realm of cheating in marriage without even taking off my clothes. And still, It was more intimate than anything I'd known in years. Most people don't talk about emotional infidelity. It's invisible, but it cuts deeper. Because you can lie about a one-night stand. You can blame it on the moment. But when your heart chooses someone else, when you start craving their voice more than your spouse's, that's a betrayal that echoes. I was living a forbidden confession with every message I sent, every smile I hid, every heartbeat I denied. And here's the thing, deep down I knew. I knew I was slipping. I knew this was the beginning of something I couldn't undo. But I didn't stop, because for the first time in so long, I felt alive. This confession of infidelity didn't happen with a kiss. It happened with a connection that felt too good, too real to walk away from. And what came next would burn away whatever innocence I had left. It was supposed to be just another event. Champagne, soft jazz, polite conversations with people wearing masks made of wealth and pretense. But that night was different. There was something electric in the air, something forbidden. When he walked in, everything else disappeared. His presence swallowed the room, and when our eyes met, I knew. This wasn't a game anymore. It was the moment my cheating story stopped being emotional and became real. We didn't plan it. No one ever really does. But the universe, or fate, or desire, lined up the pieces perfectly. A rooftop suite, city lights flickering like a pulse, and a silence between us that said more than words ever could. When he touched me, I didn't resist. I melted, because in that moment, I wasn't a wife. I was a woman starving to be felt again. And that one night sealed my story of infidelity in a way I could never erase. I wish I could tell you I hesitated, that I thought of my husband, my vows, my life. But the truth? All I could think about was him. The way he undressed me, not just my clothes, but my doubts, my fears, my loneliness. Every move, every breath, every whisper, it all felt like a promise. A dangerous, beautiful lie wrapped in silk and sin. And I chose it. I chose it. That's the part that still haunts me. Afterward, as I lay beside him in that hotel bed, 1,000 thoughts raced through my head. Guilt hadn't arrived yet, only adrenaline and this strange, twisted peace. Like I had finally exhaled after years of holding my breath. But deep down, I knew something inside me had shifted forever. This confession of cheating wasn't just a one-night secret. It was the beginning of everything falling apart, piece by piece. Coming back home felt like stepping into a different dimension. Everything looked the same. Our house, our bed, my husband's smile. But nothing felt the same. I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross, and now every word I spoke tasted like betrayal. The guilt clung to me like a second skin. I smiled at dinner, kissed him goodnight, and died a little more inside. That's the poison of infidelity. It doesn't leave visible scars, but it tears you apart from the inside out. Every time my husband touched me, I flinched. Not out of fear, but shame. And every time the other man's name lit up on my phone, my heart raced like I was being hunted by my own choices. I was living between two lives, wearing a mask in both. The silence was louder than any scream. And that secret? It grew heavier each day, turning every ordinary moment into a scene from a cheating story I never thought I'd be starring in. People think infidelity and cheating are about lust, but no one talks about the emotional aftermath, the torment, the double life. I couldn't look my husband in the eyes without wondering if he could see it, if he knew. And sometimes I wished he did, just to end the torment. Because the truth is, Keeping that secret became its own form of punishment, a confession of infidelity unspoken, echoing louder than words ever could. I started losing sleep. I'd stare at the ceiling, replaying that night, that kiss, that lie. The temptation to confess clawed at me constantly, but fear kept me silent. Fear of breaking what was left. Fear of becoming the villain in my own life. And still, a part of me longed for the thrill again. Because when you've tasted something that woke you up from the dead, it's hard to go back to pretending you're alive. There came a point when the silence became louder than the truth I was hiding. My body was present, but my mind was always somewhere else, replaying memories, drafting fake scenarios, imagining what would happen if I finally confessed. I knew this wasn't just a cheating story anymore. It was a war between who I was and who I was becoming. And every day, I felt the gap growing wider. The weight of the secret started taking a toll on my health, on my peace, on my soul. I'd stare at my husband sometimes, wondering if he deserved the truth or the lie. Would telling him free me or destroy him? I imagined the pain in his eyes, the collapse of trust, the storm that would follow. And yet, I couldn't keep pretending. My heart was choking on this confession of cheating, like a fire trapped inside a cage. I wasn't just betraying him anymore. I was betraying myself by living in fear, trapped in a version of my life I no longer recognized. I considered telling him 100 times. On the couch after dinner, in the car during traffic, lying next to him in bed, where our silence said more than words ever could. But each time I froze, because what if I lost everything? My marriage, my family, my safety net. What if this one act of infidelity defined me forever? The thought terrified me. Yet, so did the idea of carrying this alone until I crumbled under the pressure. That's the cruelest part of infidelity stories. They don't end with the affair. They linger. They haunt. They make you question your worth, your choices, your ability to ever be honest again. I was stuck in this limbo, where the only options were confession or collapse. And the more I hesitated, the more I realized the affair wasn't the only betrayal. The real betrayal was living a life that no longer belonged to me, and pretending it still did. Looking back, I see it so clearly now. The infidelity wasn't the disease, it was the symptom. A desperate cry from a woman who had spent years feeling invisible. I used to think cheating was only about lust or recklessness. But the truth? It was about absence. The absence of passion, of recognition, of feeling like I still mattered. That affair didn't start with desire. It started with loneliness that no one ever asked about. My marriage had become a museum of memories, pictures on walls, smiles in photo frames, but nothing alive in between. I didn't cheat because I wanted to destroy what we had. I cheated because I couldn't feel it anymore. The story of infidelity I lived wasn't glamorous. It was raw, chaotic, and painful, but it forced me to confront everything I had buried for years. My unmet needs, my lost voice, my forgotten self. And here's what they never tell you about cheating stories. Sometimes they're not about someone else. Sometimes they're about finding your way back to you. The affair didn't fix anything, but it cracked me open. It showed me how far I had drifted from my own truth, from the woman I used to be, from the life I once dreamed of living. I stopped blaming him, and I started asking myself, where did I disappear? So, yes, I broke my vows. I broke his heart. But the truth is, I was already broken long before that night. And in some twisted way, that confession of infidelity forced me to start healing. Not from the affair, but from everything that came before it. And while I still live with the weight of what I did, I also live with a deeper awareness of who I am and what I refuse to become ever again. So now I ask you, how many pieces of yourself have you silenced just to keep the picture perfect? How many times have you swallowed your truth, hoping the emptiness would go away on its own? Because let me tell you something, infidelity isn't always about betrayal. Sometimes it's a cry for air when you've been drowning in routine, in neglect, in forgetting who you are. This real story of infidelity isn't just mine. It's the story of countless women and men who feel unseen, unheard, untouched in their own homes. And maybe you haven't crossed the line yet, but you've thought about it. Maybe you're there right now, secretly craving something more. And the truth? That doesn't make you evil. It makes you human. The question is, what will you do with that feeling? Will you bury it deeper? Or will you finally look at your life and ask, what am I really starving for? You don't have to betray someone else to stop betraying yourself, but you do have to choose. So, what are you choosing today? If this story stirred something in you, if it made you reflect, question, or feel seen, make sure to subscribe, activate the notification bell, and leave a comment below. I want to hear your story, because healing begins the moment we stop pretending and start talking.